I'll encourage participants who are joining this session to come and take their seats. We're about to start. Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the UN, international organizations, governments, civil society organizations, farmer organizations, and private sector. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. These opening words of Charles Dickens in his A Tale of Two Cities, written more than 150 years ago, reflect the story of the times we are living in today. My name is Iftikhar Mustafa, and it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you all to this CFS 51 hybrid side event on evidence-based solutions for agri-food systems transformation in an age of interconnected and compounding multiple crises, a perfect definition of polycrisis. This event is in fact an example of partnership, co-organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Wageningen University, the World Bank, the Humanitarian-Development-Peace Nexus Coalition, and CGIAR. Ban Ki-moon, former UN Secretary General, once famously said, "We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortage, global health, food and nutrition security, and women empowerment. Solutions to one problem must be solutions to all." And if I may add, the solutions need to be scalable and impactful. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we simply cannot work on solution for food insecurity without addressing water security or water scarcity. We simply cannot work on solution for climate change without addressing food and nutrition insecurity. And we simply cannot work on food systems transformation without addressing social instability and conflicts. If you're interested in these issues, then you're in the right room, in the right event. We have an exciting, informative, and interactive session for you, for those present in the room and those joining us online. In this interconnected global village, the increasing frequency and severity of climate disasters, combined with conflicts and economic downturns, are impacting the lives and livelihoods of people in the rural areas of Odisha in India, in the villages of Debitdar in Bangladesh, in Motipur village in Nepal, in the urban areas of Karachi in Pakistan, as well as in other parts of South Asia. The polycrisis, climate change impacts, water scarcity, food insecurity, malnutrition, conflicts, social fragmentation, and degradation of the environment is affecting people's livelihoods, safety, physical security, food and nutrition security in the villages and cities of South Sudan, Somalia, and other African countries. To address this crisis effectively, there is a growing acknowledgement that agri-food systems can play a transformative role. Sustainable, resilient, and inclusive food systems can provide safe and nutritious, affordable food for everyone, create decent jobs, build strong livelihoods, and conserve the environment for more equitable socio-economic development. During the next 70 minutes or so, we will hear stories from South Asia and discuss examples from the Horn of Africa to facilitate the exchange of knowledge and innovative approaches across the countries and regions. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to remember that stories are data with a soul, and we need to share these stories of triumph and disappointment, stories of success and failure and learn from this to make a better future. Our primary goal is to present feasible and integrated solutions that can address a range of interconnected crises by driving transformative changes within the agri-food systems. This session today, there will be simultaneous interpretations, Arabic and French, in English Channel 2, French Channel 3, and Arabic Channel 5. Today we have an exciting program, as you have seen. The first speaker, the way it will work is that we will have two presentations by two experts, and we'll have some time for Q&A, and then we'll move on to an interactive session of identifying and ranking the actionable solutions. And after that, we will have a high-level panel discussion on the issues that were discussed previously. So with that, may I request Ms. Tamina Lalani Sharif, Regional Director, South Asia CGIAR, to come and to the dais and make the first presentation. Tamina, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really thrilled to be here, and thank you to FAO and the World Bank and the CFS for inviting us to join. I'm going to go through just a handful of slides to sort of set the stage for a piece of work that we've been working on with FAO and with the World Bank. It's called our Knowledge Session Series, and I want to bring you a couple of examples of the work that we've been doing in South Asia. For those of you that may not know the CGIAR, it is a lovely acronym. We are the world's largest publicly funded agriculture research network in the world. We have 13 centers around the world, and we work on everything from basic commodities such as rice and wheat to livestock to policy. But I want to talk briefly, just to set the scene, I want to talk about South Asia and the challenges in South Asia. And just to set the scene for this afternoon, I want to introduce 5 key facts about South Asia. I know that many of the people in this room and with us virtually probably don't need a lesson in South Asia, but these facts continue to stick out as long as I work in South Asia. And I feel like we have to find a solution to this. So South Asia carries the highest density of poverty and malnutrition globally. Fact number 2, the region's agri-food systems suffer from social, economic, geographic, and inequities, and formidable environmental challenges. Number 3, current agri-food systems actually fail to produce an adequate and affordable supply of diverse foods needed to sustain a sustainable and affordable healthy diet for most people. Farming systems across South Asia are actually threatened by an unsustainable groundwater withdrawal, and they're further exacerbated by policies and subsidies that are in place right now that hearken to a previous lifestyle and a previous global reality that we had. And finally, number 5, South Asia's farmers are both contributors and victims of climate change and extreme weather. And this contributes to an amazing extent to rural outmigration. And so what we have left is a vast number of women working in rural areas on small amounts of land, eking out a living for their family, while their husbands and men in the family are equally trying to eke out a living elsewhere in the world. So with that, what I want to do is just introduce to you the idea of, as Iftikhar said, partnerships in solving some of these issues are going to be key. You know, we have many of these issues around food insecurity, malnutrition, biodiversity. They become a poly-crisis. And so one of the things that we started a couple of years ago was focusing on India initially, and then South Asia now more broadly. We have begun the Knowledge Session Series, and this is a informative series that runs throughout the year. It really focuses on integrated solutions that are showcasing regional and international best practices that are at work in South Asia. We draw on a number of local and international experts, and with the goal of looking at the nexus of food security, climate change, and nutrition. This session has been running for 2 years now. We're going to go into 3.0. We're going to go into 3.0 later, starting in 2024, and CGIAR has made the decision to actually support it and be a co-contributor to that. So very quickly, I want to just run through two key examples of some of the work that's going on. So, for example, first, what you see here is an image of direct seeded rice. If you know Asia, you know that you cannot talk about food security in Asia without talking about rice. The nutritional value is aside, but rice is a means to an end. It's a means to providing families with food that will fill their bellies, to income, and to the ability to buy more nutritious food as well. And direct seeded rice is one of the key ways of talking about being able to cultivate the same amount of rice and even increase production of rice without drawing on groundwater reserves. It is an old way of pooling rice, of planting rice, but it is a way that requires a new way of looking at how we plant rice, at looking at feasibilities for soil and for pest management in the different areas, and looking for ecosystems around South Asia and around the world where rice is grown, where this sort of technology may be more feasible. Secondly, I wanted to talk about, so let me just say very briefly, there are still gaps in this innovation. There are gaps in the way that research and civil society needs to look at how we look at the viable ecosystems and how we look at viable areas where this innovation can be brought in more broadly. The second innovation that we raised through the Knowledge Series and where we have found some support for it is around mini tillers in Nepal. So Nepal, for those of you who may not know, is an exporter of human resources and of labor, leaving again many of the women farming less than 0.4 hectares of land, eking out a living for their families. The introduction of mini tillers has allowed them to actually increase the amount of maize, wheat, and rice that they're able to cultivate and actually increase their families' incomes. And we've recently completed a study at CGIAR of 1,000 different representative households across 6 districts in Nepal that has actually shown provided an evidence base for the kind of investment that this technology could positively impact these communities. And so through these sorts of research-based and evidence bases, we can actually guide civil society, guide investment portfolios, and guide governments on where to invest for the best impact. With that, I'm going to, my time is up, so I'm going to just leave you with a call to action, which is to sign up for the Knowledge Session 3.0. Please join us as we look at some of the broader issues around South Asia in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamina, for your insightful presentation. And we got some ideas of some actionable solutions in your presentation, which we have captured. And hopefully we can have some sort of discussion in the next half an hour or so. I will now introduce and pass the floor to our second speaker, Mr. Abdidik Yusuf. He is the Animal Health Officer for FAO in Somalia, and he will share his experience on strengthening the resilience food systems and ensuring food security in a context of fragility. Abdik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ikhtifar Mustafa, and thank you very much for the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present to you Food and Nutrition Security Resilience Program, or FNS-REPRO in short. Let me start from the beginning. FNS-REPRO, sorry. I can't move. Sorry, how FNS-REPRO came about. So the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution 2417, and this resolution was adopted in 2018. After the resolution was adopted, the Netherlands government translated into practice, and that's how this project in a nutshell came about. So what's FNS Repro? So FNS Repro is a program, and this program is about a 28 million program, which targets about 100,000 households, and it has a peace responsive element, a strong peace responsive element. It has a learning agenda element, and it operates across 3 countries: South Sudan, Somalia, and Sudan. And in those regions, it targets different value chains. Kindly allow me to present the case of FNS Repro Somaliland and in Somalia. In FNS Repro Somaliland, first of all, Somaliland, the economy of the population depend on livestock. About 65% of the communities, they depend on livestock, and that's the main source of income. So its target, FNS Repro is targeting for the value chain. And it is for the value chain, it's because there are so many elements challenged due to climate change that are affecting the land, and also there are consecutive droughts that has been coming. So now the FNS Repro is actually contributing to that direction. And if I give you a snapshot of, because of time, of what FNS Repro has achieved so far, it has increased about 250% of the number of the farmers that are engaged in further production. And in September, as per September this year, it has helped the communities to produce about more than 8,000 metric tons of feed, and also more than 1,000 metric tons of those feeds were processed at FNS Repro established livestock development hubs. It is also very interesting to mention that despite all the challenge that we have been facing regarding to droughts, about 60,000 animals were fed due to the project in the peak of the droughts. Now, I'll proceed to main areas, or what we call as lessons that we have learned due to FNS Repro. The first lesson that we have learned is it's very important to actually focus on production. We have achieved and we have supported the communities to produce a lot of fodder, but the first lesson that is very important to know is that increasing the production of anything is very good, but you need to have to engage other private sector so that the sustainability of that sector is increased. And that's one of the first lessons that we have learned. The second lesson is localization. FNS Repro has put a lot of effort when it comes to localization. In this particular, and especially when you are targeting in a fragile settings, FNS Repro has been supporting the government, local government, and universities, NGOs with capacity building, and now it's very important to empower them, because you are assured, even after the project, these activities could be sustained. The third lessons that we have learned is to enhance contributions to peace. And it's very, very significant achievement and something that we have learned. In the areas that we have worked in, the conflict is huge, and it's one of the things that are stopping community to make a progress. So putting a conflict responsive elements within the project or programs is quite significant, and it will help speed up the delivery of the project, as well as the long-term resilience or long-term sustainability of the things that we want to support with the communities. Lastly, in Somaliland, we have also noted one of the lessons is adaptation or flexibility of the programming. I give you an example. For the last 4 years that we have implemented this project, we have seen a desert locust upsurge. We have seen 4 consecutive failed rain seasons. We have seen coronavirus pandemic. We have seen a conflict in some of the areas that has actually impacted the project. So we have been able to reprogram the FNS Repro project so that we address the day-to-day needs of the community without forgetting the long-term vision of the project. So it is very critical to have adaptation in when we are targeting or building food system resilience in fragile settings. I would like to conclude my speech in this presentation. The major 4 takeaways that we have learned from FNS Repro project is that number 1, engaging private sector is critical. If you need to do anything, you have to engage private sector for sustainability of any project. And then also localization, putting, like FNS Repro, putting the communities at the center of the project, it will help in the long run, especially when we are operating in a fragile settings. Also, flexibility. I have told you these are the only 4 challenges that I've mentioned, but there are so many different challenges. And in those fragile settings, flexibility. It's very important that projects and the donors also to agree on such kind of flexibility so that project can adapt to ever-changing situations. And lastly, conflict sensitivity is key to when we are targeting a conflict, when we are targeting fragile settings like Somalia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. A lot of recommendations there, lessons learned, and I can imagine that in a conflict situation, the challenges are even multiplied and compounded, and you have very nicely articulated those challenges and the 4 lessons. I noted few down: flexibility, adaptation, and so on. So we will now open the floor, both online. We have quite a few participants online attending this session, and of course in the room we have quite a few of you. So we would open it up, and if you have any question for clarification, but my request to you would be please keep it brief. Brief is the soul of wheat. So make it brief for your question and come to the point directly. So if there is any question, I now open the floor. And online, I would look to my colleagues to help me. If there is any online question, we can take that. So first, let me take a question from the room. Yes. Very briefly state your name and your organization.
Okay, I'm Abdullah Maruf. I'm from Bangladesh and working with World Food Forum. It's good to hear from the Young by Heart panelists and good to hear from the evidence that they showed, but I sadly haven't seen any evidence, any work from youth involvement. And our first panelist mentioned there is some gap in innovation. So my first question is how you're seeing involving young scientists. There is so many evidence that young people are doing. So how you are incorporating young scientists in your work, or how you are envisioning it. And second panelist mentioned about engaging private sector, which is very crucial stakeholders, but are you also considering youth as the equal stakeholders in your activities in African countries? So thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very good question there. So let me first turn to Tamina to take the first question.
Thank you for the question. I really appreciate the point around youth and young scientists specifically. It's something that at the CGIAR we're taking very, very seriously. About 3 years ago, we actually launched a diversity, equity, a diversity, equity, and inclusion framework. And part of that was actually encouraging young scientists. We host a number of PhD and postdoctorate students every year. And we actually have across the organization a youth employment and young employments reference group that we bring together people on a monthly basis to help them to shape their careers, their scientific careers as well as their non-scientific careers within CGIAR, and to give them opportunities to work at any or many of our centers around the world.
Thank you very much. Abhijit?
Thank you very much. I think under the Food and Nutrition Security Resilience Program, we have considered youth a lot, and it has a strong both youth and women, for example, in the program. About more than 30% of the representation when it comes to leaderships in the communities are the youth and women. And also we have a centers called livestock development hubs, and the youth play a critical role when it comes to marketing, when it comes to innovations. They are really leading in those aspects, and they are very critical. And also giving youth a chance, it's quite impressive, because they can go a long way in a very short period of time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to remind you that you can put actionable solutions on the chat room, or to tell us about it, because we are collecting actionable solutions. So, but those have to be very brief again, maybe like 10 words or so that our colleagues can collect it. So please contribute actionable solutions from what you have heard, or from your own experience. Please help us to come up with some good set of actionable solutions for the challenges, interconnected challenges that we are facing today. Toko, do we have any questions or comments from the chat room?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you for the question. To what extent are aquatic foods integrated into this analysis? That's the question we got.
So the two examples that I presented are both around crops, obviously, and perhaps we should have chosen an example from aquatic foods. But to a large extent, CGIAR is currently working on a number of diverse crop and crop fish, crop rice, duck systems, sorry, getting caught up in my words. Aquatic foods are very much integrated into it because they are a viable source of protein for many of the smallholder farmers that we are working with.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. So the need of flexibility cannot be overstressed. How is this being communicated to the donors, and what is their response?
I think having a programs, like traditionally we have a programs that targets one thing, and but we are living in a world that is changing every day. And now I think it's something that both donors, organizations, everybody's working on, to have an adaptive program, at least something that's a dynamic, considering the local context. And particularly, I emphasize in changing food system transformations in local areas that are not stable. For example, in Somalia, there is a need to have a quite flexibility, and we are communicating that to the donors. But I think their understanding is also very, very critical on this matter, because it will help in the delivery of the objectives of all the programs that we are delivering.
Thank you, Abhijit. In fact, to add to your answer, it's not just in the fragile countries. I think there has been a mind shift among the donors over the last 10 years to be flexible, to be reactive, not to be reactive to take actions beforehand. And we have seen, dealing with the various donors, that, and in fact, the flexibility, vision, and being agile, that has been the name of the game. So we do see that not only in the fragile countries, but also in other countries also, donors are, keeping up with that expectation and responding to that demand, if you will, from the developing countries and the audience. Toko, any other point? We have a little bit of time. We can still ask some questions.
Yes, another question on the private sector. When engaging the private sector, is there a gap in terms of engaging multinational agricultural companies?
I think there is a gap when it comes to engaging the private sector. The risks that are involved in those areas, for example, particularly in Horn of Africa, it's a lot. But also, it's very important to understand that the private sector normally has higher appetite in also taking some of the risks, but still there is also need to support them to engage with the communities to de-risk, and give them a context or contacts of the community so that they can actually get involved in. And I think it's quite interesting. So one of the key things is that we need to support in de-risking so that the private sectors are heavily engaged in those areas. both private sectors that are within the nationals and also outside.
Thank you very much. Samina, you wanted to come in, please?
Yeah, maybe if I could just come in to complement what Abdikik has said. I completely agree that when we see with CGIAR, where we've been doing more and more work with the private sector, one of the key things that we're also finding is that when it comes to introducing innovations that may work in one part of the world or one community in a country, there's a need to then be able to encourage the private sector and to be able to de-risk it when they move into another country or when they move into another even neighborhood of the same country. And so the ability to do some of that groundwork with the communities, to be able to gather some of that knowledge and that evidence base to make that translation of technologies smoother and less risky for the private sector, it actually stands us all in good stead.
Yeah, so, for example, we in Somaliland, where we are right now operating, what we have done with the private sector, for example, the communities that we are targeting, they need, once they have started, they need to scale up. So they need to engage with the financial sectors, for example. So we have done a work to do some of the de-risking so that they can be connected to financial institutions so they can get a loans or things like that. So it's very important. At the end of the day, they need to not depend on you. They need to have another way that they can sustain their life even after the project. So they can go to the bank, get small loans, and then prepare some land, and also have mechanisms that are suitable for them, because the banking system mechanisms are not for the production sector, mainly for the smallholder farmers. It's for the rich people that can give monthly payment plans. But when you are a farmer, you need to have plans that are suitable for your production. For example, if the bank can wait maybe after you harvest your products and things like that. So it's quite interesting, but it's very important to engage with the private sector.
Thank you so much. I'll take a last question, a very brief one, and a brief response to that. Please, the lady.
Very quick comment. I used to work in FAO in Somalia, and I had decided I was going to be very polite and not talk, but I just want to share the experience we had at the time. There was a project which was a participatory project, and we asked the poorest people what they wanted to do, and we had flexibility for the donor to provide whatever intervention made sense. And it was extremely interesting to see that they started by saying, we need quick money, because they had lost everything. Then with the benefits they made from that money, then they started buying goats. And with the benefit of that, then they started investing in land. So they did the other way we were thinking about it in FAO. And these were young people. And these young people, I remember that were, for example, we had mills for sorghum that were very effective. And so it's very often on income generating activities related to food technology. They add value to local economies, so they don't threaten the local people. And what we were doing is actually generating private sector locally by providing support, training, etc.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think there was a statement. We take your point. We will move on to the interactive segment of this session. Now we will put on the screen the 6 or 7, I'm not sure how many we have, actionable solutions that we have gathered. And what people in the room, you're supposed to use your smartphones and look at the QR code, and that will take you to a Mentimeter. People online, on the chat room, the link has been given. So please rank these different options. You have 100 points. You need to allocate the 100 points to these different actionable solutions, and then we will get a rating very soon. So with that, please go ahead, and I will request the esteemed panel members now to come to the stage. As this action is taking place, people are trying to put the numbers in allocation. So I hope you all got it. In the room, please use the QR code, take a picture of that, and do the ranking. And online, the link is given, and allocate 100 points. So I think we're almost there. We have 30 seconds. Then we will turn off the voting so that we can lock in. Otherwise, it can go on forever. So we need to lock in, and then in 30 seconds, Hugo, please note that 30 seconds, and then lock in, and then we will see what we have. It is get a sense of the temperature of the room, physically and globally, what people think are the priorities of actionable solutions for this interconnected challenges that we are facing today. So, we will see in. I think it's still changing. So shall we turn off the? Yep. Let's turn it off. Yeah. And the voting has just ended, ladies and gentlemen. You have the results. I mean, the most efficient voting system here. You give your thing and you see the results right there. I don't see the thing, but in any case, can we see the results a bit on the screen? Okay, it's all right. We can share it later on. So, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, we have a privilege here today with us in the panel, an esteemed group of people to join us and have a conversation on the discussion we were having earlier on. We have His Excellency Marcel Bukeboom, the Netherlands Permanent Representative to the United Nations in Rome, Dr. J. Balaji, Indian Minister and Indian Alternate Permanent Representative to FAO, IFAD, and WFP, Dr. John Canisiyo, Undersecretary, Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, South Sudan, and Ms. Dina Umali Deninja, Regional Director, South Asia, World Bank. So we will have a good 20 minutes of discussion, and we have some questions for them. And I would request you to think your questions, very specific questions, so that we can have a good conversation and a dialogue. So with that, I'm sorry, Dina, I can't see you in front, but I have to face you the back. But Dina, as I mentioned, is the Regional Director for South Asia. Now, in the presentation, which you may have heard, Tamina mentioned about the significant expansion of World Bank-FAO Knowledge Series throughout the entire South Asia region. And it is quite noteworthy that this expansion is taking place. Now, my question to you is, how do you envision the actionable solutions from these knowledge session series to have impact on the challenges that we are facing today? Dina, over to you.
Thank you, Iftikhar. So good afternoon, good morning to all the distinguished guests and participants, and hello from Washington, D.C. And I regret that I'm not able to join you today in person. And first, I would like to thank the organizers of the CFS event for inviting me to this panel. As you know, and has already been mentioned by the previous speakers, we are really facing a multitude of crises, including persistent poverty in many countries, food and nutrition insecurity exacerbated by rising global prices, fragility and conflict in many countries, and the growing impacts of climate change. Every month, every 6 months, there will be a flood, a drought, a strong typhoon, or forest fire in some of our countries, has causing a lot of losses in lives, livelihoods, assets, and affecting the poorest the most. Now, we talk about how can we use these findings and really take them into actionable solutions. As I think Ms. Lalini Sharif and Mr. Yusuf already mentioned, there are a large number of solutions out there already. The question is, how do we get more countries to adopt them and scale them up? Now, one way, of course, is to inform people or inform policymakers about what are the solutions that are already available for scaling up. And the World Bank with FAO has been organizing the Knowledge Session series on the Nexus of Food Systems, Nutrition, and Climate Change, initially with a focus on India. Now, the series presents cutting-edge knowledge and national and global best practices that focuses on integrated solutions for food security, improving food security and nutrition, improving livelihoods, building resilience to climate change. But in recognizing the importance of this, the plan is now to scale this up to really foster agriculture and sustainable food system transformation in South Asia. So the next phase will now be scaling up this knowledge series from India alone to the South Asia region. But I wanted to add two more points. One is that to really make a big impact, we really need to be able to mainstream all these innovative solutions into government strategies so that it can be implemented nationwide. Just to give you an example, Nepal has adopted the Nepal Green, Resilient, and Inclusive Development Framework. And one of the pillars of this framework is to foster green and resilient agri-food system transformation. And the World Bank, together with different development partners, are now supporting the government of Nepal to scale up the adoption of all these innovative solutions that some of which are being mentioned this afternoon. The second could be from the top down. You could also start from the bottom up. Just to give you an example, we have been supporting the government of Vietnam in terms of piloting low-emission rice. Low-emission rice is you change the water applications through alternative wet and drying so you can reduce water use, keep the yields, and also reduce methane emissions. Teach farmers about better fertilizer application. You know, often they put too much than they need, so that reduce them, use better, more organic fertilizer, and therefore reduce also nitrous oxide emissions because they apply too much, and introduce a better seed so that they can also increase yield. Now, this package of technologies actually increase farmers' incomes by 30%, while also being able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In the 187,000 hectares that we piloted, the farmers are now able to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 1 million tons per year. And we're now working with the government and to also then get carbon payments for these emission reductions that will be shared between the government and the farmers themselves. So the government found that this is a very innovative solution, and now from 187,000 hectares, they want to scale it up to 1 million hectares in the country. But at the same time, a lot of these innovative solutions cannot be financed by the government alone, and it's really important to bring in the private sector. Now, for example, on this light equipment for agriculture that are more amenable to use by women, in some countries, they have now, governments are working with the private sector to develop what we call Uber tractor services. This is very widespread now in Africa, and now beginning to start in South Asia. The question is, how do we scale it up to improve access by farmers to mechanization? And in many cases, this kind of Uber tractor services are run by young people. So there was a question about how do we include the youth? And this is where I think we can encourage innovative approaches to encourage youth to develop enterprises that can be providing services to farmers and communities. And that is where the World Bank and other development partners, we are financing the scaling up of these innovative approaches. So let me stop here. Back to you, Iftikhar.
Thank you so much, Dina. A lot of important and significant points. You talked about mainstreaming the innovations in the government programs is very important, and scale and impact, and you gave a lot of examples. Thank you so much for your intervention. I now move to His Excellency Marcel Buikeboom, Netherlands' permanent representative to the United Nations. Marcel, the Netherlands has played a key role in supporting innovative multi-year resilience programs in fragile settings. In a context of increasingly fragile food systems and taking into account the localization agenda, the outcomes of the UN Food Systems Summit, and the importance of the earlier mentioned Security Council Resolution 2417, do you think we are on the right track to build resilient food systems? Is our business model and architecture fit for purpose to address these challenges? Over to you, Marcel.
Thank you, Iftikhar. Those are not easy questions, and let me try to unpack them first, because you use several terms that I think need some definition or some context before we get into answering the question. And the three things that I would like to pick out of your question is, first of all, the term resilient food systems. That is the objective that I think collectively we are working towards. Two, the term system, the architecture of the multilateral system, as you mentioned it. What do we mean by architecture? And thirdly, the term business model. You could say those are the solutions that or the means to an end. And I would like to start with the resilient food systems. I think there's slowly getting broad agreement what that means. Food systems. We have had the UN food systems process, and I think everybody in this room, I guess, agrees that we have to come towards a transformation of our food systems towards a more resilient kind of food system, or agro-food system, as we say in this house. And that is a system that involves people that have the resources to withstand shocks, that are connected with other actors and markets in that system, and that has diversity at all levels. And I'm deliberately using these four characteristics, also for the colleagues of Wageningen in the room, because this is the ABCD of food system resilience. And I think that is a good tool to look at it, of what we try to accomplish. And I think that is the direction that we do march and that we should march. Which brings me to the second part of your question, the international architecture. Your question was, is it fit for purpose? I could just say no, it's not. It's a system that we inherited. It's already 75 years old. It's too siloed, you could say. It's not very balanced. It's slow and it's not well connected. But it's the best that we have. We have to work with that. And luckily, those characteristics are not the only ones that you could attach to it. Still, the brightest minds do want to work for the multilateral system, do want to work for the United Nations, or do want to collaborate with it. It is the platform for dialogue and collaboration. And often in the field, it's often the last hope for those in dire need. So this is definitely the system that we have to work with. Which brings me to the third element, the business model, the means to an end. And also, having listened to the previous speakers, one could say there's not one solution, there's no silver bullet. A food systems approach is, above all, a way of looking, adjusting your perspective and adjusting your zoom level, analyzing the fabric of economies and societies, and seeing the connections, the interdependencies and the vulnerabilities. Also recognizing the power relations and the interests that are inherently connected to the actors in that system. And of course, we should not forget that it's about interaction of man and nature. And I listened well to Alvaro Lario this morning, who really made that point. This is man-made, the crisis that we are in, and the solutions should also come from man and leadership decisions. So that is, I think, an important one to remember. And I think that also makes it appropriate to talk about this at the CFS, which is multi-stakeholder, relatively young body, but also hampered by some of the problems that I just mentioned. And this was just my introduction, but I quickly go over a few points that I would like to make, maybe also for further discussion. First is a value chain is not a food system. We could have long debates about value. I think we should have them. But a model like that, looking through the lens of a value chain, might make that we are a bit biased for potentially more profitable regions or sectors moving away from fragile communities. I think that's something that we should be aware of, that could play a role. Of course, roles and interests may or will differ, and that is something that we should also be clear about from the beginning. Who is in there for what arguments and what interests? And finally, for discussion also, I think a food systems approach should weigh in ecosystem parameters. And that means that, for example, when you focus on production, that some of the programs that we have seen being presented here should be reconsidered, because livestock per se and production of livestock and increase of that might go to the detriment of water, land, or air. And it's really something that in a food systems approach you should address. And also other trade-offs, like when you have a crop choice, do not necessarily go for profit right away. Also take into account nutrition, as we have also heard in the previous presentation. So I'll stop here, Iftikhar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcel. Very lot of interesting and informative information, and you talked about the food system approach, and that is the whole point of this session, the interconnected nature of this problem. We cannot look at things in silo. We have to look at in a holistic, systematic way. Thank you so much. Let me go to Dr. J. Balaji, Indian Minister, alternate permanent representative to FAO. Dr. Balaji, how is India responding to these simultaneous climate and man-made crises to ensure food security and nutrition? What valuable lessons can be shared with other regions facing similar challenges? Dr. Balaji, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the organizers for inviting India for this afternoon, and also the wonderful presentations, which were quite insightful and holistically captured the whole issues. Excellencies, panelists, and ladies and gentlemen, India addresses these issues in a two-pronged strategy. One is we take up developmental initiatives. At the same time, we also address through humanitarian approach. Our social security schemes, programs, we can say it's a humanitarian approach. We employ these two. Yes, we have the problems what all of us are facing. We have climate issues, we have local skirmishes, issues of challenges, definitely. But to say a system to be resilient, it has to pass certain tests. First, we require data, information to make a better policies. For example, I'll tell you, during COVID pandemic, just before COVID, our government came up with a wonderful idea to come out with, to give bank accounts to all, to universalization of the banks, reach 500 million bank accounts were opened in a span of 4 or 5 years. Suddenly, when COVID struck, to 200 million women, we could transfer at the click of a button, their cash transfers we could give. So this has mitigated the impacts of COVID. Today, taking a cue out of that success, we transfer to farmers on an annual under one scheme called PM Kisan. $34 billion in last 3-4 years we have transferred, give the cash transfers. So as an interim measure, we have to approach resilience through a humanitarian approach. We also are doing, we have one of the best, in fact, very robust and very institutionalized food and public distribution system. We give subsidized grains to 800 million people on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. And let me say that last 3 years we have given them at free of cost. Had there not been pandemic, we give them at a $1.50 per month rate. So that is a reach we have. We have the largest school meal programs. We have one of the early child programs, the rice integrated child and women development called Portion, where we have a number of strategies, but all hinges on excellent databases. So this is a way we can forge resilience through databases. And one more hidden issue is there. The minute we are trying to come out with this, online DBT, direct benefit transfers, these will become agnostic to prejudices. Nobody knows, we need not select anybody. Nobody will complain. So at a click of button, you can just transfer across the country. So it will mitigate the transaction costs. It will put money in the right time when it is required. So that is one strategy we follow. The other strategy is insurance. We see crop insurance as an important instrument. $2 billion annually we spend on crop insurance to give universal crop insurance programs. We also are leveraging digital technologies. We have today the mobile phony and also the entire digital based technologies and agri startups. So much of work is happening. All are integrating these value chains, vulnerable communities, they're working at a field level. And most important is democratic decentralization, on which India is pioneer. We take decisions in a decentralized manner. I'm happy to say even last month, we have brought, earmarked 33% of seats in the legislatures to the women. So the women empowerment is very high priority and which we have been doing for years. And also one more area which we are working is on natural farming. We have the largest number of natural farmers in the world, 5 million plus. We have 750,000 farmers from one state which have taken up natural farming. So India addresses this with a combination of approaches. We find these solutions are developmentals are long-term, medium-term. It will give results. There is a delay in results. They have to anchor in the field and come out with result takes time. Still such time, we have to work with, humanitarian approach, and that will bring peace. And that is how it has worked, and we have been showing to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very tangible examples from India. I'm sure our audience appreciated that. Let me move on to our fourth panel member, Dr. John Canisio. He's the Undersecretary, Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, South Sudan. Dr. Canisio, from your perspective, how can interventions aiming at climate change mitigation and adaptation be leveraged to reduce food insecurity, nutrition, and strengthen community resilience? Over to you, Dr. Canisio.
Excellencies, first let me thank the invitation given to you. Thank the organizers for inviting me and giving opportunity to South Sudan to participate. Observing all protocols, I want to first agree that the world now, the climate is changing, and we have been observing this all over. And the examples mentioned here are real. For South Sudan, we are just actually new into it. Over the last maybe 3 years consecutively, we have been hit by waves of flooding, which for the first time alerted us that, look, this is not normal, because flooding used to happen and go. But for 3-4 years of flooding consecutively, it has actually made us really to now come on board. So what is happening right now? We as a government, we are looking at the experience of other countries, and we have joined even, in fighting climate through the NAPA. But most importantly, what we are doing now, we are tackling it at 2 levels. We have the Food Security Council. This is actually a cross-agency body chaired by the president. And this is essentially bringing all agencies together, including the non-governmental, to look at the issues of food security, primarily looking at the problems, dialoguing, and getting solutions. But now climate has come on board. This is also going to be a forum at the highest level to look at how we can tackle these issues. At another level, we have the the institutional arrangements. The policy and institutional framework focus on strengthening institutional capacity of the government of South Sudan for adaptation, planning, and integration of climate change into national policies and planning processes. So we are not just looking at it like that, but now climate change has to be mainstream into the government policies so that it is not actually tackled like, in silos. So this is happening, and we have the National Disaster Risk Management Policy. This is focused on introducing climate-smart agriculture, irrigation techniques, integrated pest management and disease control for crops and livestock, promoting conservation in agriculture, agroforestry to eliminate food insecurity through transforming food systems. And in that regard, I must mention that we had before the UN Food Systems Summit, we organized a dialogue at national and subnational level, looking at the food system as a viable means of achieving food security by tackling all the four betas, looking at food security and nutrition, looking at the social aspect, looking at the environmental aspect, as well as actually the need to ensure that everyone gets a share. We have also the Food Reserve Agency. The bill is actually in progress to implement the Food Security Council mission, because we say decisions are made at the Food Security Council level, but the implementation arm has to be through the food reserve, because what happened during the flooding, places were cut off. You cannot reach there, and we didn't have any reserve, and to get food to those locations, it was not possible, and all the farms were actually submerged, and even the grazing lands were submerged. So we think actually having a food reserve in place is important, and we also looked at options like the importance of promoting the indigenous crops which are nutritious. We looked at together with agencies like Vacanang and the FNS Repro to look at the indigenous seed systems, how we can promote this to mitigate against climate change. We also are looking at how research, we can bring our research system on board so that this research will now address issues at zonal, in a zonal manner, and looking specifically at indigenous systems and indigenous knowledge.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your intervention. It was very helpful. Thank you so much. I mean, we are really short of time, so we will now move on and see if there is any question in the room. And yes, I see a hand over there. Yes.
Hi, thank you. I have a question for the permanent representative of Netherlands, but I'm also curious to see what others think as well. I'm wondering from your perspective, what can donors do to support programming that address the various interlinked risks for climate change, food insecurity, and social political instability that are facing countries today?
A brief response.
Brief response, and something that my colleagues here may recognize from me. I think provide long-term funding and also do not earmark too much. Also, so place trust in the institutions that implement it, and also listen carefully and learn along the way. I think one of the previous speakers called that be adaptive. I think that is very necessary to do. And inherent or underlying to all this is inequality. And for that reason, I do not like the term donor actually to begin with, because that has the inequality already included in the term itself. So try to create an equal platform and implement together. So those are kind of the keywords that I would include in an answer on that question.
Thank you so much. We have a question here, please. Brief question.
Yeah, and thanks very much for the for this session. I believe it's the only side event that's has a focus in fragile settings. My question for everyone on the panel is, when we're talking about resilient food systems, do we need to be focusing on the furthest behind? And to that regard, do you feel that the CFS could have more of a focus on fragile settings rather than just chronic hunger, which is predominantly the focus?
Thank you so much. May I direct this question to Dr. Canisiu?
Yeah, I'm not
briefly.
sure if
yeah, please.
Yeah.
You would like to respond to this?
I'm not sure if I...
You understood the question?
Yeah.
I see. Do you want to briefly point out the question? It's about the CFS, whether the CFS is the right format to address the fragility, the issues of fragility in setting.
Okay. Thank you. Definitely, the CFS is, the right forum, because when we talk about partnership means like sitting here, exchanging knowledge and experience, and also bringing, what we have together to address issues. And fragility is just restricted to, a number of countries out of the global community. So to address that, definitely, is far bigger than the capacity of these fragile states. Take South Sudan, for example. Apart from the climate change effects, we are dealing also with, issues of conflict. So to address all this together and, achieve food security and nutrition, we need actually forums like this, where we can discuss and exchange knowledge and experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We'll take one question online. Can you share any successful examples of innovative solutions implemented in other regions or countries that have significantly improved food resilience or most marginalized groups, such as indigenous communities? Dina, do you want to take this question on examples of innovative solutions in other regions that have significantly improved food resilience?
Okay. I think a good example I can offer. I think there's no magic solution, right? But one example that I think might be useful to present is our livelihoods program in India, which we have been working extensively with the Ministry of Agriculture. And one of them is the Jeepika program in Bihar, India. It's also one of the most fragile in terms of environmental risk. It's getting a lot of flood issues. It's also one of the high levels of poverty. And so the program actually works with women, and it has organized 12 million rural women to self-help groups, providing them access to finance, markets, improved health and nutrition practices. At the same time, it's also providing them support for enhanced agriculture practices through community-based agriculture extension systems, leading to higher returns to small farmers. And as you know, when women are involved, it also has a big impact on how the food is produced and how food is provided to households and the children first. So in a sense, that a kind of integrated approach to agriculture, as well as to livelihoods, targeting it through women, I feel is a very good example. And this approach started in India. It's now being implemented with World Bank support and other partner support in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nepal. So if anyone would be interested to learn more about this livelihood approach, we would be happy to share it.
Thank you, Dina. Marcel, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just very briefly, I think this is the moment to call FNS Repro into to the answer, because this is exactly what it is. This is, after a high-level political decision, an innovative program that tried to explore that space that you were asking about, and I think the involvement of science and academic institutions together with the multilateral institution really brought it further. And I think now we are at the point that we can evaluate the results and learn again from that and see how we can perhaps even broaden it. So this is, I think, the best answer to that question.
Thank you so much. We're slowly coming to the end of this session. You have seen that there is a commonality. Yes, but I don't think, I'm sorry, I have to excuse because we are really coming with a very hard stop in about a few minutes. So we need to wrap it up. We can, the panel members will be available after the session, so please feel free to come and talk to them. So you have seen that, the interconnectedness, the compounding crisis is an issue. We cannot look at this crisis in silo anymore. We have done that many years, but we cannot do that. We have to look at in a holistic fashion. Marcel mentioned it, many of the other speakers mentioned it, and we need to find a solution that as one solution that is solution for all the crises there. So we need to really look at that aspect of it. There is a Native American saying that says, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And we need to return it the way we found it. It's a very profound statement if you think about it. Despite the polycrisis, multiple interconnected and compounding crises that we heard about today, there is spring of hope. One word describes it all: possibilities. With human ingenuity, innovation, resilience, and working together, we can make a positive difference in the lives and livelihoods of millions of people in Africa, South Asia, and the rest of the world. Please join us in the World Bank-FAO Knowledge Session Series in South Asia beginning in February 2024, and the Food and Nutrition Security Resilience Program, as Marcel was mentioning early on. These are very solid programs. We want your support. Please participate, engage, because that's how we'll move the agenda. That's how we will move the needle. Life is a dance between making it happen and letting it happen. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, through implementing integrated, actionable solutions, let us be part of this dance and return the earth just as we found it. I end this session with a quote from the great Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore, who said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke up and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." Let us act now on the actionable solutions prioritized by you all for making a better and brighter future. Thank you all for attending this session. Thank you once again. Goodbye.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you very much. The MMI project in Bangladesh got the award. The MMI project in Bangladesh got the FAO award this time, Achievement Award.
Yeah.
I thought of you because you were very good supporter.